Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where your alarm clock is not a smartphone buzzing on a bedside table, but a rooster shouting directly into the cold darkness outside your tiny wooden home. You wake before sunrise, wrapped in rough wool blankets that somehow feel both itchy and damp at the same time. Smoke hangs in the air from last night's fire, and every breath carries the scent of wet earth, old straw, and humanity living much closer together than any modern building inspector would ever allow. The year is somewhere in the Middle Ages. No electricity, no running water, no grocery stores, no delivery apps. No way to order comfort with a few taps of your thumb. And here's the uncomfortable reality check. You probably won't survive this, or at least, you probably won't enjoy it nearly as much as medieval fantasy movies suggest. Before we begin stumbling through the mud of history together, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, leave a comment telling me your location and local time. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is listening from as we drift through these sleepy historical adventures. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes and immediately face your first challenge, the floor. There isn't much of one. Beneath your feet lies packed dirt mixed with scattered straw. The straw helps absorb moisture, though it also occasionally hides surprises left behind by insects, mice, and perhaps a chicken that wandered inside during the night. You sit up carefully, your back hurts, your neck hurts. You are discovering an important medieval truth. Ergonomics have not yet been invented. The average peasant home across much of medieval Europe consists of a single room shared by family members and sometimes animals. Historians know that many rural households kept livestock close during cold months because animals provided valuable warmth. Nothing says cozy evening quite like sharing your living room with a goat. Outside, dawn slowly arrives. The village begins stirring. You hear coughing, lots of coughing. Someone is chopping wood. A baby cries. A dog barks. Another rooster decides the first rooster wasn't loud enough and offers additional commentary. You step outdoors into chilly morning air. The village appears peaceful at first glance. Small houses cluster together along muddy paths. Thin smoke rises from rooftops. Beyond the settlement stretch open fields waiting for another day of labor. It almost looks charming. Then your shoe sinks ankle deep into mud. The illusion disappears quickly. Medieval villages often lacked proper drainage. Rain transformed roads into thick, sticky channels of muck. Even in relatively prosperous areas, walking around could become an adventure in balance and patience. Your stomach growls. Breakfast is still some time away. Food occupies a much larger portion of your daily thoughts than it does for most modern people. Today, like nearly every day, survival depends on agriculture. A poor harvest can mean hunger. Several poor harvests can mean catastrophe. One famous example occurred during the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, when heavy rains and crop failures devastated large parts of Europe. Food shortages became severe, and countless people suffered as harvests repeatedly failed. Fortunately for you, today's harvest disaster is still in the future. Unfortunately, you still have chores. Always chores. The village is already awake because daylight is precious. Without electric lighting, productive hours largely follow the sun. You help carry water from a nearby source. This sounds simple until you remember there are no convenient kitchen faucets. Every bucket feels heavier than expected. Every trip feels longer than expected. And somehow, there is always another bucket waiting. As you walk, you notice how strongly everything smells. Modern life has quietly trained people to expect cleanliness. Medieval life has other ideas. Animals, cooking fires, damp clothing, refuse, and human activity all blend into a distinctive atmosphere that no candle-scented, authentic 14th century village has ever successfully captured. Nearby, an elderly villager discusses weather signs. He claims certain cloud shapes predict rainfall. Another insists birds know things humans don't. A third swears that a particular frog possesses unusual forecasting abilities. Oddly enough, some medieval weather observations contained practical wisdom accumulated through generations of experience. Others were considerably more creative. One quirky medieval belief suggested various animals could predict future weather conditions through unusual behavior. While some observations had natural explanations, Others wandered confidently into the realm of imagination. You continue toward the fields. The landscape itself shapes every aspect of life. Forests provide woodfields provide grain. The streams provide water. Nature is not a pleasant backdrop. Nature is your employer. And your employer never grants weekends. You pass a patch of cultivated land where workers already bend over crops. Agriculture dominates medieval society. Most people spend their lives producing food. The rhythms of planting, harvesting, weeding, and maintaining fields dictate the calendar more reliably than any printed planner. The work begins early, very early. You are not enthusiastic, neither is anyone else. Yet everyone continues because there is little alternative. As the sun climbs higher, you start appreciating something often overlooked about history. The past was physically demanding, constantly. Simple tasks require effort. Moving water requires effort. Preparing food requires effort. Making clothing requires effort. Heating a home requires effort. Existing requires effort. A modern person might spend more energy searching for a television remote than a medieval villager spends deciding today's schedule. The schedule has already been decided by necessity. Near the edge of the village stands a small structure used for storing grain. Food security depends on protecting these supplies. A poor storage season can invite mold, pests, and losses that become serious problems months later. Every sack matters, every harvest matters, every loaf matters. You begin noticing how carefully people monitor resources. Nothing is wasted casually. Clothing gets repaired repeatedly. Tools will receive constant maintenance. Containers are reused endlessly. In a world where replacing items is difficult, preservation becomes a skill. Historians still argue whether some medieval communities enjoyed slightly higher living standards than traditionally believed, especially during periods of economic growth. Evidence varies by region, century, and circumstance, making broad conclusions difficult. What is not debated is that life remains uncertain. Disease lurks, weather changes, harvests fluctuate, accidents happen. Yet the village keeps moving. People laugh, children play, neighbors gossip. Someone complains about a local cow with remarkable dedication. Human nature, it turns out, survives every century. You pause and look around. The rising sun casts golden light across fields and rooftops. For a brief moment, everything appears beautiful. The smoke glows softly, the dew sparkles, the village feels timeless. Then a goose chases you unexpectedly. History regains its balance. Your first medieval morning is far from over. The chores are only beginning. The hunger is only beginning. And the long day ahead will reveal just how difficult it is to live in a world where comfort remains a rare visitor and survival demands attention from dawn until darkness returns. The mud clings to your boots. The smoke lingers in your clothes. The village hums steadily around you. And whether you like it or not, you are now fully awake in the Middle Ages. The mud still clings stubbornly to your boots as the morning settles into its regular rhythm. You had perhaps hoped that surviving the first hour of medieval life would earn you a short break. Maybe a chair, maybe a cup of coffee. Unfortunately, coffee has not yet become part of your world. Instead, your reward for waking up is more work. Your stomach reminds you of this fact with a low growl that sounds remarkably judgmental. Breakfast finally arrives, though if you're imagining stacks of pancakes, sizzling bacon, and freshly squeezed orange juice, history is about to disappoint you. You sit on a rough bench beside other villagers while a simple meal is distributed. A dark loaf of bread appears. It is dense, heavy, and capable of serving as both food and emergency construction material. You take a bite, chew some more, and then continue chewing. Medieval bread often formed the foundation of daily diets. For ordinary peasants, bread supplied a substantial portion of their calories. Depending on region and wealth, loaves could contain wheat, rye, barley, oats, or mixtures of several grains. Some loaves tasted quite good. Others possessed all the softness of roofing material. Still, hunger improves almost every recipe. Alongside the bread comes ale. Yes, ale, at breakfast. This surprises modern visitors until they realize medieval water supplies were not always reliable. Small ale, containing very low alcohol levels, was commonly consumed throughout the day in many communities. You take a cautious sip. It tastes strange but not unpleasant. At least it is wet. That already places it ahead of the bread. Nearby, a child happily dips bread into ale and eats it with the enthusiasm of someone who has never experienced breakfast cereal. You suddenly miss cereal with surprising intensity. As the meal continues, conversation drifts through the room. Most discussions focus on practical matters: weather, crops, animals, repairs, the health of relatives. The possibility that someone's pig has once again escaped from where pigs are supposed to remain. Village gossip functions as medieval social media. The major difference is that misinformation spreads at walking speed. After breakfast, there is no leisurely period for scrolling through updates. The day immediately demands attention. Women begin preparing household tasks. Men head toward fields and workshops. Children contribute wherever possible. Even young children often worked from an early age, helping families perform countless daily duties. Modern childhood and medieval childhood are very different experiences. A medieval child might learn practical skills before learning to read. Many never learn to read at all. You step inside a nearby house where preparations for the day continue. The interior remains dim despite growing daylight. Small windows allow limited light to enter. Glass remains expensive and uncommon in many ordinary homes. Smoke from the hearth drifts lazily upward, though not all of it successfully escapes. Your eyes sting slightly. The room smells of ash, cooking, wool, and damp wood. A woman begins grinding grain. The process looks exhausting because producing flour requires significant labor. Every loaf represents hours of effort spread across planting, harvesting, threshing, milling, baking, and transport. You gain a new appreciation for supermarkets and for machines, and perhaps for every invention made after 1400. A spinning wheel turns in one corner. Clothing does not appear magically on store shelves. Someone must create the fibers, spin the thread, weave the cloth, cut the fabric, and sew the garments. A simple shirt represents a remarkable amount of labor. Fast fashion would sound like sorcery. As the morning progresses, you help with cleaning. The word cleaning should be understood in medieval terms. Dust exists. Smoke exists. Mud exists. Animals exist. Victory is defined less as achieving cleanliness and more as preventing complete defeat. You sweep straw, you move supplies, you carry containers. You discover that carrying containers remains history's favorite activity. Every century seems strangely enthusiastic about moving heavy things from one location to another. Outside, village life grows increasingly busy. People move constantly between homes, workshops, and fields. A blacksmith's hammer rings through the air. The sound carries surprisingly far. Metalworking occupies an important place in medieval communities. Tools, nails, horseshoes, knives, and countless other items depend on skilled craftsmen. The blacksmith enjoys a reputation that borders on legendary, partly because he creates useful objects, partly because anyone who spends all day controlling fire and shaping metal appears vaguely magical. As you watch, sparks fly from the forge. Children gather nearby, fascinated. Adults pretend not to be fascinated. They are failing. A strange rumor circulates among villagers. Someone claims a traveler recently encountered mysterious lights in a distant marsh. Another insists tiny supernatural creatures dwell near an old oak tree. A third swears both stories are connected. Quirky medieval folklore thrived in countless forms. Tales of fairies, spirits, enchanted places, and supernatural beings formed part of everyday belief for many people. Not everyone accepted such stories. But enough people did that strange rumors often traveled quickly, much faster than accurate information. Some things never change. You continue working while the sun climbs higher. Sweat gathers beneath your rough wool clothing. The fabric scratches, the heat builds. You realize another important truth. Medieval fashion prioritizes durability over comfort. No designer is asking whether these garments breathe well during physical labor. The answer appears to be no. Around midday, preparations begin for a larger meal. Not because people enjoy elaborate lunches, because hard physical work demands calories. The menu remains simple. Pottage appears. Pottage is one of the great survivors of medieval cuisine. Imagine a thick stew made from whatever ingredients happen to be available. Vegetables, grains, herbs, and occasionally meat combine into a pot that simmers for long periods. Many households ate some version of pottage almost daily. Recipes changed. The pot remained eternal. You taste it. Honestly, it's not bad. Perhaps hunger is helping. Perhaps centuries of cooks genuinely knew what they were doing. Probably both. As you eat, discussion turns toward local obligations. Most peasants owe labor, rent, taxes, or services connected to land ownership arrangements. The exact details vary considerably across regions and centuries. Life involves a network of responsibilities that leave limited room for personal freedom. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants experienced feudal obligations as crushing burdens everywhere, or whether local circumstances created more varied experiences than older historical narratives suggested. The debate continues. Your aching shoulders vote strongly for the burden theory. The afternoon waits ahead. More work waits ahead. Everything waits ahead. Yet despite the hardships, moments of humour continue appearing. Someone tells a joke, children laugh. An elderly villager accidentally sits on a basket and spends several minutes arguing with the basket, as though it acted deliberately. The basket offers no defence. You find yourself smiling, because even in difficult times, people remain people. They complain, they celebrate, they exaggerate stories, they laugh at accidents that happen to someone else. And as the morning finally gives way to afternoon, you begin understanding something surprising. The Middle Ages are not populated by historical statues. They are filled with living human beings navigating ordinary days under extraordinary challenges. The bread may be hard, the chores may be endless. The furniture may have personally offended your spine. But life continues with a steady rhythm that has carried this village through countless seasons. And now, whether you are ready or not, the fields are calling once again. The fields are calling, and unfortunately for your aching back, ignoring them is not considered a valid medieval life strategy. The midday meal settles heavily in your stomach as you leave the village behind and follow a narrow path into the open countryside. The sun hangs higher now, warming the earth and turning the morning dew into faint wisps of moisture that drift above the ground. Ahead of you stretch the fields, endless fields, or at least they feel endless when you're expected to work in them. The landscape is divided into long strips, cultivated by different families. In many parts of medieval Europe, villages operated under open field systems where agricultural land was organized into shared arrangements. Individual households work scattered strips across large communal fields. To modern eyes, it can seem surprisingly complicated. To medieval villagers, it is simply how things are done. You stare across the rows. The crops sway gently in the breeze. It looks peaceful. Then someone hands you a tool. The peaceful feeling immediately disappears. You spend the next hour learning that farming without modern machinery is astonishingly labor-intensive. Every task takes longer. Every movement requires effort. Every mistake costs valuable time. A tractor would be viewed as either a miracle or a dragon, possibly both. The soil resists your efforts with impressive determination. You push. Pull, lift, dig, repeat. Your shoulders begin composing strongly worded complaints. The villagers around you continue working with practiced efficiency. Their movements reveal years of experience. You, meanwhile, are discovering muscles that apparently existed solely to suffer in medieval agriculture. Nearby, a horse pulls equipment through a neighbouring field. The animal works steadily, snorting occasionally as it moves. Livestock are among the most valuable assets a family can possess. Oxen, horses, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs and chickens all contribute to survival in different ways. Animals provide labour, food, wool, transportation and economic security. They also provide endless opportunities for frustration. A farmer several rows away spends 10 minutes attempting to convince a stubborn donkey to move in a particular direction. The donkey has other plans. Historians have preserved many records about medieval agriculture. Unfortunately, the donkey appears unconcerned with historical documentation. The contest continues. The donkey wins. As the afternoon progresses, you gain a deeper appreciation for weather. Modern people notice weather. Medieval people depend upon it. A few weeks of drought can damage crops. Excessive rain can ruin harvests. Late frosts can destroy hopes carefully built throughout an entire season. The sky is not merely scenery. The sky is a business partner with a wildly unpredictable personality. You glance upward. A few clouds drift lazily overhead. Several workers immediately begin discussing what those clouds might mean. Predictions vary dramatically. One farmer expects sunshine, another predicts rain, a third predicts rain, sunshine, wind, and possibly divine commentary. Weather forecasting remains a work in progress. Still, generations of observation have taught people valuable lessons. Certain seasonal patterns are well understood, others remain mysterious. Historians still argue whether medieval farmers possessed more sophisticated environmental knowledge than modern people often assume. Surviving evidence suggests many agricultural communities develop remarkably detailed understandings of local landscapes. What nobody debates is that farming remains hard. Very hard. Sweat trickles down your face, your hands grow sore. The afternoon sun seems personally committed to testing your endurance. At one point, you catch yourself daydreaming about office chairs. Imagine explaining that to a medieval villager. Yes, I come from a future where people sit indoors and complain about emails. The villager would probably stare at you for a long moment before returning to work. Around you, the agricultural world remains alive with activity. Birds dart across fields searching for insects. Dogs patrol nearby. Workers move steadily through their tasks. The rhythm becomes almost hypnotic. Dig, lift, carry, repeat. Dig, lift, carry, repeat. Eventually, your mind begins wandering. This may be nature's way of protecting people from agricultural boredom. You observe patches of wildflowers growing along field edges. You notice insects buzzing through the grass. You watch distant figures moving across neighboring plots. Life unfolds slowly here, not because people lack ambition, because nearly every goal requires tremendous physical effort. Even basic survival demands planning. Harvest seasons dominate the calendar. Planting schedules matter. Distorted methods matter. Everything connects to food. A poor decision today can create serious problems months later. Nearby, several villagers discuss unusual agricultural beliefs passed down through generations. One mentions that planting certain crops during particular moon phases improves results. Another recalls stories about protective charms buried near fields. A third insists his grandfather once blamed crop problems on mischievous spirits living beneath a hedge. These kinds of traditions existed throughout medieval Europe. Some reflected practical observations wrapped in folklore, others belonged entirely to the realm of superstition. One quirky belief held that certain objects placed in fields could protect crops from misfortune or poor harvests. Whether they actually worked remains somewhat difficult to verify. The crops themselves have chosen not to comment. By late afternoon, your attention shifts towards sheep grazing on nearby land. Wool represents one of the medieval world's most important resources. Entire regional economies depend upon sheep farming and textile production. The wool trade plays a significant role in many medieval societies. A sheep standing nearby looks directly at you. You look back. Neither side gains meaningful insight from the encounter. The sheep eventually resumes chewing. You suspect it won the exchange. Further down the slope, workers repair fencing damaged during recent weather. Maintenance never ends. Wood rots, roofs leak, tools break. Animals escape fields require constant attention. The medieval world runs on a never-ending cycle of repairs. You begin to understand why nobody has time for hobbies involving intricate collections of decorative spoons. As the sun slowly lowers, shadows lengthen across the landscape. The day's heat begins easing. A cooler breeze drifts across the fields. Everyone notices. Everyone appreciates it. Even the donkey appears slightly less argumentative. You pause briefly and survey the countryside. The view is undeniably beautiful. Rolling fields glow beneath golden light. Birds circle overhead. The village sits quietly in the distance, smoke rising from chimneys. It is the sort of scene that often appears in paintings. What paintings rarely include is how exhausted everyone feels while standing in those beautiful landscapes. Beauty and exhaustion coexist quite comfortably in medieval life. Your body feels every hour of labor. Your hands ache. Your feet ache. Even your aches seem tired. Yet the villagers around you remain calm. This is normal. This is daily life. This is simply another afternoon spent working the land that feeds families, supports communities, and determines whether winter will be manageable or miserable. The sun continues sinking. The workday is approaching its end. Not because anyone has finished everything. Nobody ever finishes everything. The daylight is simply running out. And in a world governed by the arising and setting sun, that matters more than any schedule written on paper. You gather your tools and begin the slow walk back toward the village. Behind you, the fields remain waiting, always waiting. Because tomorrow, and the day after that, and countless days after those, they will demand your attention all over again. The fields fade behind you as you trudge back toward the village, your legs moving mostly out of habit now. The golden evening light paints everything with a softness that almost tricks you into forgetting how tired you are. Almost, your shoulders still feel as though someone secretly replaced them with sacks of wet grain. The village grows larger as you approach. Smoke curls from rooftops, voices drift through the cooling air, dogs bark somewhere in the distance. A child runs across a muddy lane, chasing a chicken with the determination of a military commander pursuing an enemy army. The chicken appears unconcerned. You are beginning to suspect chickens ruled the Middle Ages. As you enter the village proper, something becomes impossible to ignore. The smell, not one smell, many smells, all at once. Medieval villages possess what might politely be called a complex aromatic profile: wood smoke, livestock, cooking food, wet straw, manure, leather, human sweat, standing water. Various substances nobody wants specifically identified. Modern noses are not prepared for this sensory orchestra. The average medieval villager likely noticed these odors far less than you do. Familiarity has a way of softening even the strongest smells. Still, newcomers probably required an adjustment period, possibly a long adjustment period. You continue down the main path. Calling it a road would be generous. Recent rain has left patches of mud everywhere. Deep footprints overlap in every direction. Wagon wheels have carved grooves through the earth. Drainage remains an ongoing challenge, a very ongoing challenge. You carefully step around one puddle only to discover another directly ahead. The puddles appear organized. You suspect they have meetings. Nearby, a woman empties wastewater into a ditch. This is not unusual. Medieval sanitation systems varied greatly from place to place, but many villages lacked sophisticated waste disposal methods. As a result, cleanliness often depended upon local customs, available resources, and community effort. Some settlements maintained surprisingly effective systems. Others relied heavily on optimism. Unfortunately, optimism is not a recognized disinfectant. You pass a communal area where several villagers gather around a well. Fresh water remains one of the most important resources in daily life. The well serves as a practical necessity and a social hub. News spreads here, rumors spread here, arguments spread here, probably germs too. A group of women exchange stories while filling containers. One discusses a cousin from a neighboring village, another mentions unusual weather. A third reports hearing about a strange illness affecting livestock several miles away. Information travels constantly through conversations like these. The medieval world may lack social media, but gossip functions remarkably well. In fact, gossip may be the most efficient communication technology available. As evening settles further, you notice something else. People cough frequently, very frequently. The sound echoes from homes and pathways alike. Disease remains a constant companion in medieval life. Not every illness is deadly. Many are simply unpleasant. But even routine sickness can become serious when medical knowledge remains limited. Life expectancy in the Middle Ages was affected by numerous factors including disease, nutrition, accidents, and infant mortality. The numbers often sound shockingly low to modern ears, though they are influenced heavily by high childhood mortality rates. If someone survived early childhood, they could often live considerably longer than many people assume. Still, nobody takes health for granted. A fever is worrying. A persistent cough is worrying. Almost everything is worrying. You soon encounter one of the village's unofficial healers. She carries bundles of herbs gathered from nearby woods and meadows. Her knowledge has been passed through generations. Many medieval remedies relied upon plants with genuine medicinal properties. Others were considerably less effective, and a few seem designed specifically to confuse future historians. One mainstream fact often surprises people: medieval herbal medicine sometimes worked. Plants such as willow contained compounds related to modern pain relief treatments. Practical knowledge and folklore frequently existed side by side. The healer proudly displays several herbs. You nod politely despite having no idea what most of them are. Then she mentions a treatment involving powdered snail shells. You decide not to ask follow-up questions. A small crowd gathers nearby as another villager tells a story. Apparently, someone recently encountered mysterious lights dancing over marshland after dark. Several listeners immediately cross themselves, others lean closer. Stories about supernatural phenomena appear everywhere in medieval Europe. Fairies, ghosts, wandering spirits, strange lights, enchanted forests. One quirky belief held that mysterious lights seen in wetlands could be supernatural beings attempting to lure travelers astray. Today, many such sightings are explained through natural phenomena, but at the time they inspired genuine concern. The storyteller's audience appears completely captivated. Honestly, so are you. The human brain enjoys a good mystery regardless of century. As darkness approaches, livestock return to secure areas for the night. Cows shuffle slowly through the village. Goats wander where goats please. A pig somehow appears exactly where nobody wants a pig to be. The pig seems delighted by this achievement. Animals and humans share space much more closely here than in most modern communities. The relationship is practical, necessary, and occasionally chaotic. You nearly collide with a goose. Agon, the goose remembers you. You suspect this is personal. Further along the path, villagers discuss a recent illness that spread through a nearby settlement. Such conversations happen often. Disease outbreaks remain one of the greatest fears of medieval society. Without understanding bacteria or viruses, people attempt to explain illness through the knowledge available to them. Some explanations involve environmental factors. Some involve spiritual concerns. Some involve combinations of both. Historians still argue whether medieval communities were more effective at managing certain public health challenges than older stereotypes suggest. Evidence from some towns indicates organized efforts to improve sanitation and reduce disease risks. The reality appears more complicated than the common image of universal filth and disorder. Like most history, the truth exists somewhere between extremes. The sky darkens gradually overhead, stars begin appearing. Without modern light pollution, the night sky feels enormous. Constellations shine clearly, the Milky Way stretches across the heavens. For a moment, everyone seems smaller beneath it. You understand why medieval people often looked upward for meaning. The universe appears vast, mysterious, and impossibly beautiful. Then someone nearby trips over a bucket. The spell breaks. Humanity remains wonderfully consistent. As evening deepens, cooking fires glow warmly through open doorways. Families gather indoors. Conversations soften. The village settles into its nighttime rhythm. You feel exhaustion settling into your bones. A full day of labor has transformed fatigue into something almost philosophical. You no longer dream of comfort. You dream of sitting down, maybe lying down, possibly never standing again. Yet even now, the village remains alive with sounds. Laughter drifts from one house. A baby cries in another. Someone sings quietly while completing a final chore. Life continues, messy, noisy, uncertain, but undeniably alive. And as darkness wraps around the village, you begin realizing that surviving medieval life isn't simply about enduring hard work. It's about navigating a world where disease, discomfort, superstition, and community all intertwine every single day. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. For tonight, the crowded village breathes softly around you, settling beneath the stars while unseen dangers and familiar routines wait patiently for dawn. The village settles into darkness, but your medieval adventure is far from over. By the time dawn returns, the familiar chorus of roosters, barking dogs, and coughing neighbors once again pulls you from uneasy sleep. You sit up slowly. Your back complains. The dirt floor remains exactly where you left it. The goat, unfortunately, is also exactly where you left it. At least some things in life are dependable. Today is market day. Even in a world of endless labor, market days bring a welcome change of scenery. They offer opportunities to buy, sell, exchange news, settle debts, hear rumors, and occasionally witness arguments over matters so specific that future generations would struggle to understand them. After a quick breakfast of bread and ale, you join the growing stream of villagers heading toward the market town. The roads are busy. Farmers guide carts loaded with produce. Merchants lead pack animals. Craftsmen carry goods they hope to sell. Children hurry alongside adults, excited by the possibility of treats, entertainment, or simply seeing something different. The atmosphere feels noticeably lighter than an ordinary workday. People still have responsibilities. They are simply carrying those responsibilities to a more interesting location. As the market comes into view, the noise reaches you first. Voices, animals, hammering, lotter, bargaining, someone shouting about the quality of onions, another person shouting about the quality of completely different onions. Competition is alive and well. The market occupies a large open space surrounded by buildings, stalls, and workshops. Colourful fabrics hang from wooden frames. Goods from nearby villages sit beside products transported from much farther away. The scene bursts with activity. It is easy to imagine medieval communities as isolated places, but trade-connected towns, villages, and regions in surprisingly complex ways, markets formed vital economic networks throughout medieval Europe. You wander among the stalls. One vendor sells bread, another offers fish, another displays tools. Nearby, a trader presents spices that have travelled extraordinary distances through interconnected trade routes. Pepper, cinnamon, and other imported goods are valuable commodities. The prices quickly remind you that luxury remains expensive in every century. You examine a small pile of pepper. The merchant watches carefully. You suddenly feel as though you are standing near a treasure chest. In many ways, you are the medieval spice trade connected Europe with distant regions across Asia and beyond. These goods often passed through numerous intermediaries before reaching local markets. A few grains of spice carry stories stretching across continents. Not bad for something destined to end up in soup. The smells here are dramatically different from the village. Fresh bread mingles with roasting meat. Herbs fill the air. Livestock contribute their own opinions. The result remains chaotic but undeniably fascinating. As you move deeper into the crowd, you notice how carefully transactions unfold. Coins change hands. Measurements are checked. Weights are inspected. Trust matters. Verification matters even more. Local authorities often regulated markets to maintain standards and discourage fraud. Whether those regulations always succeeded is another matter entirely. One merchant loudly insists his scales are perfectly accurate. Another merchant looks deeply unconvinced. The discussion appears destined to continue for some time. You quietly continue walking. Market day also provides entertainment. A travelling performer gathers spectators near a corner of the square. Children push forward eagerly. Adults pretend they are only passing by. Nobody believes them. The performer begins juggling. A small crowd forms immediately. Within minutes, laughter spreads through the audience. In a world lacking television, movies, and video games, live entertainment carries enormous appeal. A skilled storyteller or performer can become a local celebrity. Nearby, a musician plays a tune on a simple instrument. People tap their feet. Some sing along. For a brief moment, daily worries seem less important. Not absent, just quieter. You stop at a stall selling charms and protective items. The vendor eagerly explains their benefits. One charm protects livestock. Another protects crops. A third allegedly protects against misfortune during travel. That seems useful, considering medieval roads. Superstition thrives alongside religion, practical knowledge and local tradition. One quirky medieval belief held that carrying certain objects could ward off bad luck or harmful influences. Different regions developed their own traditions. Some charms were religious. Others emerged from folk practices stretching back generations. Whether they worked remains open to interpretation. The vendor assures you they do. The vendor also seems eager to make a sale. You notice a group gathered around a travelling news bearer. News travels through merchants, pilgrims, messengers and travellers moving between settlements. The latest reports concern political developments involving local nobles. Several listeners pay close attention. Others appear more interested in rumours involving neighbouring villages. Human priorities remain wonderfully consistent. National politics compete with neighbourhood gossip. Sometimes neighbourhood gossip wins. As the day progresses, taxes become a topic of conversation. Nobody appears enthusiastic. This too remains remarkably consistent across centuries. Various tolls, rents, fees, and obligations affect medieval economic life. Exactly who owes what depends on location, social status, and local arrangements. The system can become complicated quickly. A merchant explains several regulations governing trade. You stop listening after the third detailed explanation involving grain measurements. Your medieval attention span has limits. Nearby, craftsmen display their work. Blacksmiths, potters, leatherworkers, carpenters. Each stall showcases skills developed through years of practice. Guilds in many towns help regulate trades, maintain standards, and protect members' interests. These organizations play important roles in urban economic life. Historians still argue whether guilds primarily encouraged quality and stability, or whether they sometimes restricted competition and innovation. Like many historical institutions, they likely did both. The debate continues. The craftsmen continue working. A boy rushes through the crowd, carrying a basket larger than his torso. A dog follows. The dog seems optimistic about future food opportunities. You respect the dog's commitment. Toward afternoon, a dispute breaks out over the price of livestock. The argument remains spirited but largely civil. Market negotiations often involve considerable haggling. Both sides expect it. Nobody appears surprised. Several bystanders offer unsolicited opinions. This improves nothing. The crowd enjoys itself immensely. As sunlight begins softening, you pause near the edge of the market and take in the scene. Hundreds of conversations overlap. Goods move from hand to hand. Animals shuffle through crowded spaces. Children laugh. Merchants bargain. Travelers share stories. The medieval world suddenly feels larger than your village. Trade connects people. Easier travel. News spreads. Cultures interact. Despite the limitations of transportation and communication, medieval society remains far from isolated. A strange story circulates through the crowd shortly before departure. Apparently, a merchant claims to have heard tales of distant lands where enormous creatures roam deserts and carry people across vast distances. You smile. Camels have entered the conversation. To many Europeans who had never seen one, such animals might sound almost mythical. Reality often outperforms fantasy. The market slowly begins winding down. Stalls close, goods are packed. People prepare for journeys home. The energy fades gradually rather than all at once. You join the stream of villagers heading back toward familiar roads. Your feet ache, your shoulders ache, but your mind feels busy. You have seen trade, entertainment, regulation, superstition, craftsmanship, and community all woven together in a single day. The market may only happen occasionally, yet it reveals the beating heart of medieval society. And as evening approaches once more, another world waits beyond the village. The world of castles, lords and stone walls rising above the countryside. From a distance, they look magnificent. Up close, you are about to discover a rather different story. The market fades behind you as the road bends through rolling countryside. Your legs are tired, your boots are muddy, and your appreciation for modern transportation has reached almost spiritual levels, yet something ahead catches your eye. At first it appears only as a distant shape on the horizon. Then gradually it grows larger. Stone walls, towers, battlements, a castle. Even after everything you've experienced so far, the sight still inspires a certain excitement. After all, castles dominate popular imagination whenever people think about the Middle Ages. They appear in movies, novels, paintings, video games, and countless daydreams involving heroic knights and dramatic speeches. From a distance, the castle looks magnificent, majestic, powerful, almost magical. Then you get closer, and reality arrives carrying a bucket of cold water. The first thing you notice is that castles are not designed primarily for comfort. They are designed to survive attacks. This sounds obvious until you actually step inside one. Suddenly, all those thick stone walls seem less romantic. The walls are thick because someone might someday try to smash through them. The narrow windows are narrow because they help with defense. The steep staircases are steep because invading enemies should not have an easy time climbing them. Comfort occasionally appears on the list of priorities, usually somewhere after survival. You cross a drawbridge and enter through the gatehouse. The castle courtyard bustles with activity. Servants carry supplies. Craftsmen repair equipment. Soldiers move between buildings. Horses stamp impatiently. Dogs wander confidently as though they own the property. They may actually own the property. Nobody seems willing to challenge them. The castle functions as more than a military structure. It is a working community. People live here, work here, eat here, argue here, gossip here. The stone walls contain an entire miniature world. You glance upward toward one of the towers. The height is impressive. The stairs leading there are less impressive. Medieval architects apparently viewed staircases as an opportunity for character development. You begin climbing. The steps twist upward through narrow stone passages, round and round. Up and up. Your legs, already exhausted from previous days, file additional complaints. By the time you reach the top, you have gained a wonderful view of the surrounding countryside and lost all interest in further climbing. The landscape stretches for miles, fields spread across the horizon. Villages appear as tiny clusters of rooftops. Roads wind through forests and open land. From up here, the castle's strategic importance becomes obvious. You can see potential threats long before they arrive, assuming, of course, that you're not too tired from climbing stairs to notice them. Back below, life continues throughout the castle. Contrary to popular belief, not everyone living inside castle walls enjoys luxury. Many residents work hard every day performing essential tasks: cooking, cleaning, maintenance, animal care, food storage, administrative duties. The list seems endless. A noble household can require dozens or even hundreds of people to function smoothly. The lord of the castle may occupy the highest social position, but countless others keep the entire operation running. You enter the great hall. This is the heart of castle life. Long tables fill the room. Banners hang from walls. Firelight flickers across stone surfaces. The hall serves many purposes: meals, meetings, celebrations, ceremonies, political discussions. Occasionally arguments, probably many arguments. The atmosphere feels impressive, until a draft of cold air sweeps through. Then you remember that giant stone buildings are not especially good at retaining warmth. Castles can be surprisingly chilly. Even wealthy residents often struggle with cold temperatures during winter months. Heavy tapestries help. Large fires help. Extra clothing helps. Nothing completely solves the problem. You suddenly appreciate central heating with a depth of emotion previously reserved for close friends. A servant passes carrying food toward the kitchens. You follow, mostly because food is involved. The castle kitchens are enormous compared to anything in the village. Multiple workers prepare meals simultaneously. Smoke rises, knives chop vegetables, pots simmer, bread bakes. The entire operation resembles a carefully organized storm. Feeding a large household requires serious planning. Supplies must be stored. Ingredients must be prepared. Meals must be coordinated. Failure is not encouraged. One mainstream historical fact often surprises people. Noble households consumed vast quantities of food. Records from some medieval estates reveal enormous purchases of grain, meat, fish, ale, and wine to support residents and guests. The logistics alone are impressive. A cook shouts instructions. Several assistants immediately respond. You wisely remain out of the way. Nobody wants to anger a medieval cook responsible for feeding an entire castle. That seems dangerous. Outside again, you encounter several soldiers practicing with weapons. Training remains important even during peaceful periods. Castles exist partly because conflict remains a constant possibility. Nobles are expected to provide military service and maintain defensive capabilities. The soldiers drill repeatedly. Practice, repeat, practice again. The routine feels familiar. Apparently, every profession eventually discovers repetitive training. Nearby, a young noble learns riding skills under careful supervision. Education for noble children often differs dramatically from that of peasants. Boys destined for knighthood may train in horsemanship, weapon use, etiquette, and administration. Girls from noble families often learn household management, literacy, religious instruction, and social responsibilities. Life paths are heavily shaped by social status. The opportunities available to you depend greatly upon the circumstances of your birth. Historians still argue whether social mobility in medieval society was slightly more flexible than older narratives suggest. Some evidence indicates individuals could occasionally improve their circumstances through trade, military service, or specialized skills. The debate continues. Most people, however, remain close to the social position into which they were born. As afternoon fades, conversation turns toward castle legends. Every old castle seems to accumulate stories. Hidden passages, lost treasures, mysterious visitors, unexplained sounds. One particularly enthusiastic resident claims a ghost occasionally walks along the battlements during stormy nights. Others appear skeptical. Not skeptical enough to investigate personally. A quirky medieval belief found in many regions held that certain castles or ancient sites contained supernatural guardians protecting hidden valuables. Conveniently, nobody ever seemed able to locate the treasure itself. The stories, however, survived wonderfully. As evening approaches, you observe preparations for a feast. Not a grand royal banquet, just a larger gathering than usual. Tables are arranged, food is prepared, candles are placed throughout the hall. The atmosphere grows lively, people laugh, talk extant stories. Despite social divisions, castles remain communities filled with human beings trying to navigate everyday life. The noble dining at the high table worries about politics, land disputes, and obligations. The servant carrying dishes worries about finishing tasks correctly. The blacksmith worries about repairs. The stable worker worries about horses. Everyone worries about something. That part of history never changes. Darkness settles beyond the walls. Torches flicker. The countryside disappears into shadow. The castle suddenly feels isolated, standing alone against the night. Strong, imposing, protective, yet beneath the grandeur. You now recognize something important. Castles are not fairy tale palaces. They are working fortresses filled with drafts, responsibilities, endless maintenance, and people doing their best within a difficult world. And tomorrow, beyond these walls, another powerful force shapes every moment of medieval life. Faith, because in the Middle Ages, religion is not simply something people practice. It is woven into nearly every hour of every day. The castle settles into darkness behind you, its towers standing silently against a sky crowded with stars. The feast has ended, the candles have burned low. Most people have retired for the night, yet even here, surrounded by stone walls and sleeping households, something remains constantly present. Faith. You notice it everywhere once you begin looking, not just in churches, not just in prayers. Everywhere, it appears in greetings, in meals, in daily routines, in celebrations, in fears, in hopes, in explanations for events both wonderful and terrible. For a medieval person, religion is not a separate part of life. Religion is life. The next morning begins, as many mornings do, with the sound of church bells. The bells ring across fields, villages, and roads. Their tones drift through the cool air, reaching people already beginning their daily work. Without clocks in every household, bells serve practical purposes as well as religious ones. They help structure the day, they mark important moments, they gather communities together. You follow a small crowd moving toward the village church. The building is modest compared to the castle, yet it commands enormous respect. Its stone walls have witnessed baptisms, weddings, funerals, festivals, and generations of prayers. For many villagers, this is the center of community life. The church offers spiritual guidance, social connection, and a sense of order in a world filled with uncertainty. You step inside, the air feels cooler. Dim light filters through narrow windows. Candles flicker softly. The scent of wax and incense hangs in the room. Voices lower automatically. Even children seem quieter here. For a moment, the outside world fades away. One mainstream historical fact is that the medieval church exercised tremendous influence across much of Europe. Religious institutions shaped education, charity, politics, law, art, and daily life in ways difficult for many modern people to imagine. The priest begins speaking. Many members of the congregation cannot read. Books remain expensive and uncommon. As a result, sermons play an important role in spreading religious teachings and information. People listen carefully. Stories carry power. Lessons carry power. Words carry power. In a world with limited access to written material, memory becomes an essential skill. After the service, villagers gather outside. Some discuss practical matters. Others exchange news. Several children immediately begin playing games. Human beings can shift from solemn reflection to enthusiastic chaos with remarkable efficiency. You wander through the churchyard. Gravestones stand quietly among patches of grass. Life expectancy remains uncertain in medieval society. Death is more visible than it is in many modern communities. Most people have witnessed losses among family members, neighbors, or friends. As a result, faith often provides comfort as well as structure. It helps people understand a world that can seem unpredictable and frightening. And frightening things are never far away. A poor harvest, disease, storms, war, accidents. These realities shape everyday thinking. You soon discover that faith and fear often travel together. A woman mentions an unusual eclipse she remembers from years ago. Another villager recalls a comet seen in the night sky. Several people describe these events with deep seriousness. Unusual celestial phenomena frequently attracted attention during the Middle Ages. Some viewed them as signs, others saw warnings, still others debated their meanings endlessly. Historians still argue whether ordinary medieval people interpreted unusual natural events primarily through religious beliefs, local traditions, or a blend of multiple influences. The answer appears to vary considerably depending on time and place. One thing remains clear: the sky inspires questions. Many questions. You notice this same curiosity extending into everyday superstitions. A farmer touches a charm hanging near his doorway. A traveller mutters a brief prayer before beginning a journey. Someone avoids mentioning certain topics after dark. Faith exists alongside countless local customs and beliefs. The boundaries between religion, folklore, and tradition often blur. One quirky medieval belief held that church bells could help drive away storms or harmful supernatural forces. When severe weather approached, bells were sometimes rung in hopes of offering protection. Whether the storms listened remains unknown. Storm clouds have historically been difficult negotiating partners. Later in the day, you accompany a group visiting a nearby monastery. The atmosphere changes immediately. The noise of ordinary life fades. The grounds feel peaceful, ordered, almost timeless. Monasteries play important roles throughout medieval society. Monks preserve texts, copy manuscripts, provide education, offer hospitality to travelers, maintain gardens, conduct religious services. Many monasteries become centers of learning during periods when books are rare and literacy limited. You enter a room where manuscripts are being copied by hand. The sight is astonishing. Each page requires patience, skill, and concentration. Beautiful letters flow across parchment. Decorations shimmer with vivid colors. Some pages contain elaborate illustrations. Producing a single manuscript can require months or even years of work. You suddenly feel guilty about every text message you've ever ignored. The monks continue working quietly. The room feels almost hypnotic. Scratch of pen, turn of page. Scratch of pen, turn of page. The rhythm becomes soothing. Outside, gardens flourish within carefully maintained plots. Herbs grow in neat rows, flowers bloom. Vegetables thrive. Monastic communities often possess extensive knowledge of agriculture and herbal remedies. Practical experience combines with careful observation. The result can be surprisingly sophisticated. You spend part of the afternoon speaking with a monk who studies natural phenomena. Contrary to popular stereotypes, medieval scholars do not spend all their time avoiding questions. Many actively investigate them. They observe stars, record weather patterns, study texts, debate ideas. Knowledge advances slowly by modern standards, but curiosity remains very much alive. The monk explains a theory regarding planetary movements. You understand roughly half of it. The planets probably understand even less. Still, the conversation reminds you that medieval society contains far more intellectual activity than popular myths often suggest. As evening approaches, people begin preparing for another night. Candles are lit, animals secured, doors closed, prayers offered. Across villages, towns, monasteries, and castles, countless individuals end their day in familiar ways. Some pray for good harvests, some pray for healthy children. Some pray for protection during travel, some simply pray for tomorrow. Life remains uncertain. Faith offers reassurance, not answers to every question, not solutions to every hardship, but reassurance. And in a world where disease can arrive unexpectedly, where weather can ruin crops, where roads can hide dangers, reassurance carries tremendous value. Darkness spreads across the landscape. Stars emerge once more. The same stars seen by peasants, nobles, monks, merchants, and travelers alike. Above them all, the night sky stretches endlessly. Below it, medieval communities settle into sleep. Yet tomorrow, you will leave familiar roads behind. Because beyond villages, churches, and castle walls lies another challenge entirely: travel. And the medieval world has some very strong opinions about comfortable journeys. Unfortunately, none of those opinions involve comfort. The stars slowly fade as dawn creeps across the horizon. The monastery bells are now behind you. The village is behind you. The familiar fields are behind you. Today, for reasons you are already beginning to regret, you are traveling. Modern people often describe travel as relaxing. Medieval people would likely find this statement hilarious. You shoulder a small bundle of belongings and step onto the road, or perhaps road, is an optimistic description. The path before you is uneven, muddy in places, rocky in others, and apparently designed by someone who held a personal grudge against ankles. You take a few steps, the journey has begun. Your feet immediately start negotiating surrender terms. Travel in the Middle Ages is slow, very slow. Most people spend much of their lives close to where they were born. Some never travel farther than neighbouring villages. Long-distance journeys certainly happen, but they require time, planning, money and patience. Lots of patience. The road winds through farmland first. Farmers already work in the distance. Smoke rises from cottages. The familiar rhythm of village life gradually fades behind you. Ahead lies uncertainty. And mud. Always mud. A merchant travelling in the same direction falls into step beside you. He carries goods destined for a market several days away. The man has spent years on medieval roads. You quickly realise this experience has made him cautious. Very cautious. He watches strangers carefully. He checks weather constantly. He discusses safe stopping places with the seriousness of a military strategist. There is a reason for that. Travel carries risks. Bandits exist. Accidents happen. Weather changes suddenly. Road conditions vary wildly. A journey that appears simple on paper can become difficult very quickly. One mainstream historical fact is that medieval roads varied enormously in quality. Some important trade routes received regular maintenance, while others could become nearly impassable during certain seasons. Your current road seems eager to demonstrate this principle personally. A wagon ahead becomes stuck in mud. Several travellers stop to help. Much pushing occurs. Several creative opinions regarding mud are expressed. Eventually the wagon escapes. The mud remains victorious in spirit. By midday, the landscape changes, fields give way to woodland, tall trees rise overhead, the road narrows. Shadows deepen beneath the branches, the forest feels beautiful, also slightly unsettling. Descent forests occupy a powerful place in medieval imagination. They provide timber, game, and useful resources. They also inspire countless stories. You can understand why. The deeper you walk, the quieter everything becomes. Birdsong echoes overhead, leaves rustle softly, sunlight filters through gaps in the canopy. Every bend in the path seems to hide something unseen. Most of the time, that something is merely another tree, but your imagination remains unconvinced. A fellow traveller begins recounting local folklore. According to him, a nearby forest contains strange spirits. Another traveller insists a giant wild man once lived somewhere among these woods. A third claims both stories are nonsense, then quietly admits he avoids travelling here alone after dark. The discussion continues. One quirky medieval belief found across various regions involved wild woodland spirits, mysterious forest beings, or supernatural creatures said to inhabit remote places. Forests often represented the unknown, and humans have always enjoyed filling unknown spaces with stories. As the afternoon progresses, you encounter a group of pilgrims. Their clothing is dusty, their boots are worn, their determination is impressive. Pilgrimages form an important part of medieval religious life. People travel to sacred sites for spiritual reasons, personal vows, healing hopes, or acts of devotion. Some journeys cover extraordinary distances. Looking at the pilgrims, you realize your own complaints about sore feet sound increasingly weak. You continue onward. The road eventually emerges from the forest and follows a river. The sight is immediately welcome. Water glitters in sunlight. Birds skim across the surface. The scenery feels peaceful. The bridge ahead inspires less confidence. You stare at it. The bridge stares back. Neither side appears reassured. Crossing rivers presents serious challenges throughout medieval history. Bridges are valuable infrastructure. Where bridges do not exist, ferries and fords become essential. The bridge before you appears sturdy enough, probably. You step carefully. Every creak sounds significant. Every plank seems eager to make an announcement. Fortunately, the structure holds. The river remains below rather than around you. You count this as a major victory. Late in the afternoon, clouds begin gathering overhead. Travellers notice immediately. Weather matters even more when you're far from home. Rain transforms roads into misery. Heavy storms can delay journeys. Strong winds create additional problems. The merchant beside you studies the sky. His expression grows thoughtful. You study the sky too, mostly because everyone else is doing it. Soon a debate begins regarding the clouds. One traveller predicts rain. Another predicts clear weather. A third predicts rain, clear weather, and possible divine symbolism. Weather forecasting remains delightfully ambitious. Historians still argue whether medieval travellers relied primarily on local knowledge, seasonal patterns, or inherited weather lore when planning journeys. The reality was probably a combination of all three. Regardless, nobody possesses a weather app. You are all at the mercy of the sky. Fortunately, the rain never arrives, at least not today. As evening approaches, attention shifts toward finding shelter. This is another aspect of travel modern people often underestimate. You cannot simply reserve a room online. There is no digital map showing nearby accommodations. Instead, travelers rely on inns, monasteries, personal connections, or sheer luck. Luckily, an inn stands ahead near a crossroads. The building appears crowded, which means it is functioning exactly as intended. Inside, the common room buzzes with activity. Merchants, pilgrims, messengers, labourers. Travelers from different regions share the same space. Stories flow freely. News travels with them. The inn acts as a miniature information network. A traveller from a distant town discusses recent political developments. Another describes unusual weather farther south. A third claims to have encountered wolves near a mountain pass. You suspect the wolves are growing larger with every retelling. This is how travel stories work. Dinner is simple but welcome. Bread, stew, ale. After a day on the road, it tastes wonderful. Exhaustion remains history's greatest seasoning. Nearby, someone begins telling tales about distant lands. The listeners gather eagerly. One story describes vast deserts. Another describes enormous cities. Another describes creatures so unusual they sound imaginary. Some details are probably exaggerated. Others are surprisingly accurate. The medieval world is more connected than many people assume. Trade routes, pilgrimages, diplomacy and commerce carry people and information across remarkable distances. As darkness settles outside, candles flicker throughout the inn. Conversations soften. Travelers prepare for sleep. You find a place to rest, not a particularly comfortable place, but after today's journey, comfort has become a flexible concept. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds around you. Murmured conversations, crackling fire, occasional laughter, someone snoring with the confidence of a siege engine. Tomorrow the road continues, and somewhere ahead lies a growing town, where opportunity, ambition, and hardship all crowd together inside busy walls. For now, though, the medieval road finally releases you from its grip. At least until morning. Morning arrives with all the gentleness of a blacksmith testing a new hammer. The inn gradually comes alive around you. Someone is already eating breakfast. Someone else is already arguing about travel routes. A horse outside is expressing very strong opinions about being a horse. The fire crackles. Boots stomp across wooden floors. The day begins. You stretch carefully. Every muscle reminds you that medieval travel was invented before suspension systems, cushioned footwear, and physical therapists. After a quick meal of bread, cheese, and ale, you continue down the road with a steady stream of travellers. The countryside slowly changes again. Fields become more frequent. Road traffic increases. Wagons appear more regularly. Merchants pass carrying goods in both directions. Something larger lies ahead. You can feel it before you see it. Then, near midday, the town finally emerges on the horizon. Stone walls rise above surrounding fields. Towers overlook the roads. Smoke drifts upward from hundreds of chimneys. The place feels alive even from a distance. And crowded, very crowded, as you approach the gates, the noise grows steadily louder. Voices. Animals, hammers, cartwheels, shouting vendors. Church bells, the sound of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people sharing the same space. Compared to a village, a medieval town feels almost overwhelming. The gate itself bustles with activity. Travellers enter, merchants unload goods. Officials inspect carts. Questions are asked. Fees may be collected. Nobody moves particularly quickly. Patience remains one of the most useful travel skills available. Eventually you pass through. The town unfolds around you. Narrow streets twist between tightly packed buildings. Upper floors often extend outward above the road. Some houses seem so close together that neighbours could nearly shake hands from opposite windows or exchange complaints. Both are important urban traditions. You move carefully through the crowd. The streets are packed with people. Craftsmen hurry to workshops. Labourers transport goods. Children weave through gaps with astonishing confidence. Dogs patrol like unofficial security officers. The entire town appears permanently busy. One mainstream historical fact is that medieval towns became important centres of commerce, manufacturing and trade. As urban populations grew, towns played increasingly significant roles in regional economies. Opportunity exists here. So does competition, a lot of competition. You pass a row of workshops, the sounds are incredible. Metal clanging from a blacksmith's forge, wood being shaped by carpenters, leatherworkers cutting and stitching materials, potters shaping clay. Every street seems dedicated to a different trade. The smell changes constantly: fresh bread, wood smoke, leather, fish, spices. Waste. The town offers an unforgettable sensory experience. Unfortunately, some of those memories may not be pleasant. You quickly discover another reality of urban life. Space is limited, very limited. People live close together, work close together, store goods close together, raise families close together. Privacy exists mostly as a theoretical concept. A woman, leaning from a second-story window, is somehow involved in a conversation happening halfway down the street. You have no idea how the discussion started. You suspect it began yesterday. The marketplace occupies the centre of town. Compared to the rural market you visited earlier, this one feels larger and more permanent. Stalls line the square. Merchants display goods from near and far. Customers bargain energetically. The flow of money and merchandise never seems to stop. You pause near a cloth merchant. Textiles represent one of the most important industries in many medieval towns. Producing cloth requires enormous effort, growing fibres, spinning thread, weaving fabric, dyeing materials, selling finished products. Entire economies can revolve around these activities. A brightly coloured piece of cloth catches your eye. The price catches your eye even faster. You quietly move on. Nearby, apprentices work under the supervision of experienced craftsmen. Learning a trade often involves years of training. A young apprentice might spend much of adolescence mastering specialized skills. The arrangement benefits both parties. The apprentice gains knowledge. The master gains assistance. The apprentice also gains a detailed understanding of exactly how many mistakes are possible in any given profession. The answer appears to be many. Further along the street, you encounter members of a guild discussing business matters. Guilds help regulate trades, maintain quality standards, train apprentices, and protect economic interests. Membership often provides valuable advantages. It can also create restrictions. Historians still argue whether guild systems encouraged economic stability or limited innovation and competitions. Like many historical institutions, they likely accomplished both depending on circumstances. The debate remains lively. Much like the guild members themselves, a heated discussion about pricing appears underway. Everyone involved seems deeply invested. You wisely continue walking. The town also contains striking contrasts. Prosperity exists, so does poverty. Some homes display clear signs of wealth. Others reveal families struggling to get by. Economic differences become more visible in densely populated communities. Opportunity creates success for some people, not for everyone. You pass a narrow alley where labourers rest during a break. Their clothes are worn. Their face is tired. The town may offer possibilities, but survival still requires hard work. In many ways, the challenges simply take different forms. As afternoon progresses, you visit a public square where announcements are occasionally made. Crowds gather whenever interesting news appears. Today, a messenger has arrived carrying reports from another region. People listen attentively. Trade news, political developments, road conditions, military concerns. Information holds value. Knowing something before your competitors can be extremely useful. Human nature remains remarkably consistent across centuries. One particularly enthusiastic storyteller nearby claims to have heard of a distant city where buildings contain dozens of rooms and markets operate every day. Several listeners appear skeptical. Others seem impressed. The storyteller grows more dramatic with each sentence. You suspect the city gains several extra rooms every time he repeats the tale. Not far away, you encounter a curious vendor selling unusual objects claimed to possess special properties, protective charms, lucky tokens, small carved figures. One quirky medieval belief held that certain symbols or objects could attract good fortune in business ventures. Merchants, travelers, and craftsmen often carried such items. Whether luck noticed these efforts remains uncertain. The vendor, however, remains very confident. Confidence appears included in the purchase price. As evening approaches, the town grows even busier. Workshops finish their daily tasks. Merchants close stalls. Customers hurry through final purchases. Church bells ring across rooftops. The sound echoes beautifully through the crowded streets. You pause beside a busy intersection and watch the flow of people. The town feels different from everything you've experienced so far. The village revolves around agriculture. The castle revolves around power. The monastery revolves around faith. The town revolves around opportunity. People come here hoping to improve their lives, to learn trades, to earn money, to build futures. Some succeed, others struggle, but everyone participates in a complex web of commerce, labor, and ambition. The sun begins sinking behind the walls. Golden light spills across rooftops. Shadows stretch along narrow streets. The day's energy gradually softens. Yet one challenge remains common to both towns and villages: illness, because tomorrow you are about to place your trust in medieval medicine. And that may be the most dangerous decision you've made yet. The town settles into evening, but your body has begun staging a rebellion. Your feet ache from travel. Your shoulders ache from carrying belongings. Your backache has now become such a permanent companion that you are considering giving it a name, perhaps Geoffrey. Geoffrey the back pain. A loyal friend since Section 1. As darkness deepens outside, you notice something else: a cough. At first it seems insignificant, just a small irritation. Then another cough follows, and another. Soon your throat feels scratchy, your head feels slightly warm. In the Middle Ages, this is the exact moment when concern begins quietly knocking on the door. Because illness is never just illness. It can be inconvenience, it can be danger, it can be catastrophe. And nobody knows which one yet. The next morning, after a restless night, you decide to seek medical help. This sounds sensible. It also sounds slightly terrifying. You step into the busy streets and ask several locals where treatment might be found. Their answers vary considerably. One recommends a respected healer. Another suggests a barber surgeon. A third recommends prayer. A fourth recommends onions. You are not entirely sure onions belong in the same category as healthcare. The fourth villager seems very confident. Confidence, you are learning, is often available even when certainty is not. Eventually you find a local healer. The room smells strongly of herbs. Bundles of dried plants hang from ceiling beams. Small containers line shelves. Mortars and pestles sit on work tables. The setting certainly looks impressive. The healer listens carefully as you describe your symptoms. This is reassuring. People in the Middle Ages do not lack intelligence. They observe, they compare experiences, they pass knowledge through generations. Many medieval healers possess substantial practical understanding of common illnesses and treatments. The challenge is that scientific knowledge remains incomplete. Very incomplete. One mainstream historical fact is that medieval medicine was heavily influenced by the ancient theories of physicians such as Galen and Hippocrates. Their ideas shaped medical thinking for centuries. The healer asks questions, examines your condition, considers possible remedies, then begins discussing bodily humours. This is where things become interesting. According to humoral theory, human health depends upon balancing 4 bodily humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness results when these become unbalanced. To modern ears, the theory sounds strange. To medieval practitioners, it provides a framework for understanding disease. You nod politely, mostly because you have no better alternative. The healer prepares an herbal mixture. Some ingredients are recognizable. Others appear to have been collected from places no reasonable person would voluntarily explore. You drink it. The taste is memorable, not necessarily in a positive way. Still, certain herbal treatments genuinely contain useful medicinal properties. Medieval medicine often achieved more success than popular stereotypes suggest. Some remedies worked, some did not. Some likely helped because patients rested while taking them. Sometimes rest is surprisingly powerful medicine. After thanking the healer, you continue exploring. Soon you encounter another branch of healthcare, the barber surgeon. The shop immediately captures your attention. Tools hang neatly from walls. Customers wait nearby. The barber surgeon performs multiple roles: hair cutting, minor surgery, dental work, bloodletting. The job description is impressively broad. You watch from a safe distance, very safe distance. Barber surgeons provided many practical medical services throughout medieval society. While their methods seem alarming today, they often represented the best available options for treating injuries and certain conditions. A patient emerges looking relieved. Another enters looking nervous. This appears to be the standard sequence. Inside, discussions of bloodletting arise. The practice is based on humoral theory and remains widely accepted. The idea is to restore balance by removing blood. Modern medicine generally disagrees. At the time, however, many practitioners consider it effective. You quietly decide your cough may not require that level of enthusiasm. Outside, the town continues bustling, yet illness remains a constant topic. People discuss fevers, aches, remedies, family experiences. Health concerns affect everyone. Without antibiotics, vaccinations, or modern diagnostic tools, even common illnesses can become serious. A merchant tells a story about recovering from a severe fever thanks to a particular herbal treatment. Another insists prayer played the larger role. A third claims chicken soup deserves the credit. The argument remains unresolved. Perhaps all three contributed. Historians still argue whether medieval healthcare systems were significantly more effective than older popular portrayals suggest. Recent scholarship often emphasizes the practical knowledge, observational skills, and community care present within many medieval societies. The reality, as usual, is complicated. Some treatments help, others harm. Many outcomes depend upon factors nobody fully understands. Later that day, you visit a monastery infirmary. The atmosphere differs from the town, calmer, quieter, more organized. Monastic communities often provide care for travelers, the poor, and the sick. Knowledge accumulates here through observation and experience. Gardens supply medicinal plants. Records preserve treatments. Patients receive food and rest. The combination sometimes proves surprisingly effective. A monk explains several herbal remedies used for common complaints. You recognize some plants from modern medicine. Others sound more mysterious. One quirky medieval remedy involves powdered gemstones incorporated into certain treatments. The theory behind this practice remains somewhat difficult to defend scientifically. The gemstones themselves remain wonderfully silent on the matter. Still, people seek hope wherever they can find it. Hope matters. Especially when illness strikes. As afternoon passes, you observe daily life through a slightly different lens. Every cough catches your attention, every limp, every bandaged hand. The medieval world is physically demanding. Accidents happen frequently. Tools are sharp, roads are rough. Work is exhausting. Healthcare is therefore not a luxury, it is a necessity, even if its methods occasionally inspire concern. Near sunset, a traveling physician arrives in town. A crowd gathers quickly. Physicians occupy an important social position, particularly in larger communities. Formal medical education exists in some universities and scholarly traditions. Not every practitioner receives such training, but learned medicine forms an important part of medieval healthcare. The physician discusses treatments, diagnoses, and theories with impressive confidence. Whether the confidence always matches reality remains difficult to determine. Medicine continues evolving, slowly by patient, gelization by generation. As evening settles across the town, your cough has already begun improving. Perhaps the herbs helped, perhaps rest helped, perhaps time helped. Whatever the reason, you feel fortunate. Many medieval people are not so lucky. Disease remains one of the greatest challenges of the age. Invisible, unpredictable, persistent. You return to your lodging as candles flicker in windows throughout the town. Voices drift from nearby streets. The familiar sounds of daily life continue, yet beyond the walls, beyond the markets and workshops, another force waits on the horizon, one capable of disrupting everything. Trade, harvests, travel, families, entire communities war. And in medieval society, even ordinary people often find themselves pulled into its shadow, whether they wish to be or not. War arrives the way a distant storm arrives. At first, it is only a rumour. A merchant mentions unusual troop movements. A traveller reports seeing armed riders on a road several days away. Someone claims a nearby lord is gathering men. Someone else insists the situation is exaggerated. The rumours spread through town faster than accurate information ever could. You have already learned that medieval communities thrive on gossip. Unfortunately, war is one of those subjects that attracts plenty of it. For several days, life continues normally, markets remain busy, workshops stay active, church bells still ring, children still play in the streets, then official news arrives, and suddenly the rumours stop being rumours. People gather in small groups to discuss the situation. Prescriptions grow serious, voices lower. Everyone understands the same uncomfortable reality. When conflict begins, ordinary people rarely get to ignore it. That includes you. One mainstream historical fact is that medieval warfare depended heavily on logistics. Armies required enormous amounts of food, equipment, animals, and supplies. Moving and supporting soldiers was often as challenging as fighting itself. This means war affects far more people than those carrying weapons. Someone must produce food, someone must transport supplies, someone must repair equipment, someone must care for animals, someone must pay for everything. The burden spreads outward through society like ripples in a pond. You soon discover this firsthand. The town becomes noticeably busier. Messengers ride in and out. Blacksmiths work longer hours. Carpenters receive urgent requests. Merchants discuss rising prices. The atmosphere feels tense. Not panicked, just tense. Like everyone is waiting to see what happens next. You visit a blacksmith's workshop and find it crowded. The ringing of hammers fills the air. Sparks fly, metal glows bright orange in the forge. Workers shape horseshoes, repair tools, and produce military equipment. The blacksmith barely pauses long enough to wipe sweat from his face. Business, it seems, is booming. The circumstances are less cheerful. Outside, several young men practice with spears. Some appear enthusiastic. Others look as though they would rather be anywhere else, which is understandable. War sounds exciting in songs. Real preparation tends to involve a great deal more sweating. A local official reads instructions from a lord's representative. Obligations are discussed. Responsibilities are reviewed. Certain individuals may be required to provide service. Others may need to contribute supplies. The details vary depending on social status, location, and local customs. The common theme is simple. Nobody gets entirely left out. You watch people react. Some accept the news calmly, some worry openly, some attempt jokes. The jokes are not especially successful. Even humour struggles when uncertainty arrives. A veteran soldier sitting outside an inn notices your curiosity. He motions for you to sit beside him. The man has seen military campaigns before. His face carries the weathered look of someone familiar with hard roads and harder experiences. He speaks quietly, not dramatically. That is what makes his stories memorable. He describes long marches, bad weather, shortages of food, broken equipment, waiting, endless waiting. The reality of warfare often involves surprisingly little fighting and enormous amounts of discomfort. You find this oddly believable. The Middle Ages have consistently demonstrated a remarkable commitment to discomfort. Nearby, a horse stamps impatiently while being groomed. War horses represent valuable military assets. Maintaining them requires skill, money, and constant attention. A noble rider approaches to inspect several animals. The horses receive more careful examination than many people. Honestly, some of them seem to expect it. As preparations continue, discussions turn toward famous battles. Stories circulate about heroic victories and dramatic defeats. Details vary depending on who is telling them. With every retelling, certain heroes become slightly braver. Certain enemies become slightly larger. Historical accuracy occasionally takes a brief holiday. Still, the stories serve an important purpose. They help people understand events that often feel overwhelming. Historians still argue whether medieval chroniclers exaggerated the size of armies and battles in surviving records. Many numbers reported in historical sources remain subjects of debate among scholars today. The arguments continue centuries later. The medieval storytellers would probably be delighted. As afternoon passes, you accompany a supply wagon heading toward a nearby camp. The road is crowded with activity. Carts carry grain. Others transport barrels, blacksmiths send finished equipment. Laborers move materials in every direction. The scale of organization surprises you. Armies do not simply appear. They must be built, fed, maintained, supplied. Every loaf of bread and every repaired wheel matters. At the camp, activity fills every corner. Tents stretch across open ground. Soldiers train in groups. Officers hold discussions. Animals graze nearby. Smoke rises from cooking fires. The scene resembles a temporary town, a very noisy temporary town. One group practices archery. Another drills with spears. Commentals echo across the field. Repeat, correct mistakes. Repeat again. The process looks exhausting. Because it is, military effectiveness depends heavily on discipline and practice. Even the most experienced soldiers spend time training. You notice one recruit struggling repeatedly with the same maneuver. His instructor patiently corrects him, again and again and again. Eventually the recruit succeeds. The instructor nods. The recruit looks relieved enough to celebrate. Several nearby soldiers immediately volunteer suggestions. None are requested. Human nature remains undefeated. As evening approaches, campfires begin appearing across the encampment. The mood changes, training ends, conversations begin, meals are prepared, stories are exchanged. People relax where they can. War may be approaching, but ordinary life still finds space to exist. One soldier shares a strange tale about a battle supposedly influenced by a lucky raven. Another claims a particular banner possesses protective powers. A quirky medieval belief found in various regions held that certain animals, symbols, or signs could predict victory or defeat before a battle. Such stories spread easily among people facing uncertainty. Hope has always traveled well. Darkness gradually settles over the camp. The fires glow warmly against the night. Voices soften. Some men stare into the flames quietly. Others laugh. Others write letters or offer prayers. Tomorrow remains unknown. That uncertainty hangs over everything. You sit for a while watching sparks rise into the darkness. The sight feels strangely peaceful. Yet beneath that peace lies a truth impossible to ignore. When war comes, ordinary people carry its weight alongside soldiers, farmers, craftsmen, merchants, families, entire communities. And as the camp settles into uneasy sleep, you realize that surviving medieval times is not only about enduring hunger, disease, and hard labor. Sometimes it is about enduring uncertainty itself, the kind that arrives on horseback and changes everything. The uncertainty of the military camp lingers in your mind long after you leave it behind. For days, perhaps weeks, people have discussed conflict, prepared for conflict, worried about conflict. Now, for a brief moment, life seems determined to push back. The season has brought a festival, and medieval people, despite everything you have witnessed so far, are remarkably good at finding reasons to celebrate. You arrive in a village just as preparations are underway. Colourful banners hang between buildings. Doctals are being arranged. Children dart through the streets with the unstoppable energy possessed exclusively by children and certain varieties of goose. You instinctively check for geese. Experience has taught you caution. The mood is noticeably different from the tension surrounding military preparations. People smile more. Work pauses, at least temporarily. Even the village dogs seem excited. Or perhaps they simply sense increased opportunities for dropped food. Either way, enthusiasm is widespread. One mainstream historical fact is that festivals and feast days occupied an important place in medieval life. Religious holidays, seasonal celebrations, local fairs, and community events provided welcome breaks from routine labor. Considering how much labor you've seen, the break feels thoroughly deserved. The village square fills steadily throughout the morning. Farmers arrive from nearby fields, craftsmen close workshops, merchants set up temporary stalls, musicians begin tuning instruments. The atmosphere grows louder by the minute. You notice something immediately. People are dressed more carefully than usual. Clothing remains practical, of course. This is still the Middle Ages. Nobody is arriving in sequined disco jackets, yet many villagers save their best garments for special occasions. Bright colours appear where possible. Decorative details receive attention. A festival is a chance to show pride, status, and community spirit. It is also a chance to remind everyone that your cousin spent far too much money on an impressive hat. The cousin appears delighted by this achievement. Music begins near midday. A group of musicians starts playing while dancers gather nearby. The instruments sound different from anything familiar in the modern world. Flutes, drums, stringed instruments, sibyl melodies rise above the crowd. Soon people begin dancing, not cautiously, not politely, enthusiastically. You quickly discover that medieval celebrations are not passive experiences. Spectators frequently become participants. The distinction dissolves quickly. Someone attempts to pull you into a dance. You resist. Several more people assist. Resistance proves futile. Moments later, you are participating in movements that probably qualify as dancing under at least one legal definition. The villagers seem pleased. Your dignity is less certain. Fortunately, nobody appears concerned. The purpose is enjoyment, not perfection. A refreshing concept. Nearby, food vendors do brisk business. The smells drifting through the square are magnificent. Fresh bread, roasted meat, stews, cheese, honey cakes. After so many days of simple meals and hard travel, the feast feels extraordinary. Food often occupies a central place in medieval celebrations. Special occasions allow communities to enjoy treats unavailable during ordinary days. You purchase a small honey cake. It disappears almost immediately. You briefly consider buying another. Then remember medieval economics. The honey cake remains a treasured memory. As the afternoon unfolds, entertainers arrive. Storytellers gather crowds beneath shaded areas. Jugglers perform tricks. Acrobats demonstrate impressive skills. A traveling performer balances on a narrow beam while delivering jokes. The audience laughs loudly, even when the jokes are questionable, possibly especially when the jokes are questionable. Entertainment plays a vital role in medieval society. Without modern screens, people rely heavily on live performances, music, stories, and community gatherings. Talent matters, charisma matters, and confidence matters most of all. One performer tells a tale involving a foolish nobleman, a clever farmer, and a remarkably intelligent donkey. The donkey once again emerges as the most competent character. This seems historically plausible. The audience loves it. Stories often serve multiple purposes: entertainment, moral lessons, social commentary, occasionally opportunities to make fun of authority figures without directly naming them. The crowd appreciates these opportunities greatly. Later, athletic competitions begin. Young men compete in running contests. Others demonstrate archery skills. Children organize games of their own. Some contests appear highly structured. Others appear to have been invented approximately 30 seconds before they began. Enthusiasm compensates for organization. You watch an archery competition draw considerable attention. Skilled archers place arrows impressively close to their targets. The crowd cheers every successful shot. A few less successful attempts receive equal attention. For different reasons, laughter spreads easily. Historians still argue whether medieval festivals provided meaningful social release from rigid hierarchies, or whether they ultimately reinforced existing social structures through ritual and tradition. The answer may be both. For a day or two, distinctions soften, communities gather, people interact, shared experiences matter. Then ordinary life resumes. For now, though, the celebration continues. As evening approaches, local folklore enters the festivities. A storyteller begins recounting old legends. Children gather immediately. Adults gather more slowly while pretending not to be interested. Nobody believes them. The stories feature heroes, giants, dragons, enchanted forests. Mysterious travelers, a quirky medieval belief held that certain festival nights allowed unusual supernatural activity, with spirits or magical beings moving more freely through the world. Whether anyone truly believed every tale is difficult to know. What is clear is that people loved hearing them. The stories could connect generations. Grandparents remember hearing them. Children learn them. Communities preserve them. The storyteller's voice rises and falls dramatically. The crowd hangs on every word. As darkness settles, torches illuminate the square. The celebration enters its most beautiful phase. Golden light flickers across faces. Music continues. Conversations flow. The stars appear overhead. For a little while, the hardships of medieval life seem farther away. Not gone, just farther away. The farmer worried about crops laughs with neighbors. The craftsman concerned about business shares food with friends. Children race between groups. Musicians keep playing. Life feels lighter. And perhaps that is the true purpose of festivals, not to erase hardship. To remind people that hardship is not the entire story. You sit quietly near the edge of the square and watch the gathering. The sounds blend together, music, laughter, footsteps. Conversation, the scene feels warm and human. The same people who labour in fields, endure illness, pay taxes, survive harsh winters, and worry about war are capable of creating joy together. That realization stays with you. Eventually the crowd begins thinning. Families return home. Torches burn lower. Musicians pack instruments. The festival slowly drifts toward its conclusion. Tomorrow, ordinary responsibilities will return. They always do, yet tonight leaves something valuable behind. A reminder that medieval life contains not only struggle but celebration, not only survival but community. And as the final songs fade into the night air, another challenge waits ahead. Because while festivals reveal the joyful side of medieval society, the courts and laws of the age reveal something very different. A world where justice can be swift, strange, and occasionally bewildering. The last notes of the festival music fade into the cool night air, torches burn low, families drift home. The village gradually returns to its familiar rhythm. For a little while, everyone had been united by laughter, stories, dancing, and honeycakes. Now another side of medieval life steps forward, a far less cheerful one. Just the next morning, you notice an unusual crowd gathering near the centre of town. People are arriving from surrounding streets. Merchants pause their work. Children attempt to sneak closer. Adults pretend they are only passing through. Nobody is fooled. Something important is happening. You follow the crowd and soon discover the reason. A legal dispute is about to be heard. In the modern world, court proceedings often happen inside formal buildings, surrounded by paperwork, procedures, and enough legal terminology to make ordinary people question their life choices. Medieval justice can look very different. Depending on time and place, cases may be handled by local lords, town officials, church authorities, royal representatives, or various combinations of them. The system is complex, sometimes surprisingly sophisticated, sometimes surprisingly confusing, often both simultaneously. One mainstream historical fact is that medieval Europe contained overlapping legal systems. Local customs, royal law, feudal obligations, and church courts could all influence how disputes were resolved. The result is a legal landscape that occasionally resembles several rulebooks arguing with one another. The case before today's gathering involves property rights. Specifically, a disagreement over land boundaries. At first glance, the matter sounds simple. It is not. Nothing involving property boundaries is ever simple. The two parties present their arguments, witnesses are called. Neighbours offer testimony, several people point in different directions. Everyone appears absolutely certain. The officials listening must somehow transform this confusion into a decision. You immediately develop sympathy for medieval judges. Nearby, an elderly villager whispers commentary throughout the proceedings. The man possesses strong opinions, very strong opinions, about everyone. You suspect he would happily provide legal analysis for the next 6 hours if given the opportunity. Fortunately, nobody asks. As the hearing continues, you notice how important reputation can be. Character matters. Trust matters. Community relationships matter. In smaller settlements especially, people often know one another personally. That knowledge influences perceptions. For better or worse, eventually a ruling is delivered. Not everyone seems happy. This is generally considered evidence that the legal process is functioning normally. Outside the court area, discussions begin immediately. People debate the outcome, offer alternative solutions, question various details. Humanity has never struggled to find volunteer legal experts. A nearby blacksmith appears convinced he could have resolved the matter in half the time. The blacksmith may be wrong, he may also be right. History refuses to clarify. As the day progresses, you learn more about medieval punishments. The subject attracts considerable attention, partly because people are curious, partly because punishments often serve public purposes. Communities want rules understood. They want consequences visible. The exact penalties vary enormously depending on location, period, status, and offence. Many cases involve fines, others involve public humiliation, some involve imprisonment. The reality is far more varied than popular stereotypes suggest. You encounter a town official who explains local regulations. The list seems endless. Market rules, trade standards, Batorti obligations, public behavior expectations. The town depends upon cooperation, at least in theory. In practice, cooperation occasionally requires encouragement. And by encouragement, medieval authorities sometimes mean penalties. One quirky legal tradition found in certain regions involved symbolic ceremonies connected to property disputes, agreements, or local customs. Some rituals appear surprisingly elaborate to modern observers. Yet they often helped communities remember important decisions before widespread literacy became common. A memorable ceremony is harder to forget than a piece of paper, especially if someone falls into a ditch during the ceremony. Those are the details people remember. Later in the afternoon, you visit a larger town where another legal matter attracts attention. This one involves trade regulations. Merchants gather to discuss standards and responsibilities. Guild representatives participate. Officials listen. The discussion becomes highly technical measurements, weights, quality controls, permits. You quickly discover that medieval bureaucracy is very capable of producing long conversations. Some traditions transcend centuries. The merchants argue respectfully, mostly. One participant becomes so passionate about grain measurements that you begin wondering whether he dreams about weighing equipment. The possibility seems real. Despite occasional frustrations, legal systems serve important functions. Trade depends upon trust, Batorti depends upon rules. Communities depend upon conflict resolution. Without some form of order, daily life becomes much more difficult. Historians still argue whether medieval justice was more effective than popular imagination allows. Surviving records suggest many courts handled large numbers of ordinary disputes with surprising regularity and practical efficiency. The reality, once again, proves more complicated than myths suggest. Not perfect, not chaotic, something in between. As evening approaches, conversation turns toward famous cases from local history. Every community seems to possess stories, remarkable disputes, unexpected verdicts, memorable mistakes. One elderly resident recounts a decades-old argument involving livestock, a fence, and an extremely stubborn goose. You immediately believe the goose was responsible. Experience has prepared you. The story grows increasingly dramatic with every retelling. The goose eventually acquires near-legendary qualities. By the end, it sounds capable of military strategy. Nobody questions this development. Darkness begins settling over rooftops. The crowd disperses. Officials finish their duties. Merchants close shops. Families return home. The legal disputes of the day gradually give way to ordinary evening life. Yet something about the proceedings remains with you. Medieval justice may appear unfamiliar. Its methods may differ. Its assumptions may differ. Its procedures may differ. But beneath those differences lies something recognizable. People trying to solve problems, people arguing over fairness, people seeking order in complicated circumstances. The questions are ancient. The answers remain imperfect. Some things never change. You walk through quiet streets illuminated by scattered candlelight. The air feels cooler now. Autumn seems closer. The growing chill serves as a reminder. Another challenge approaches, not war, not disease, not courts, winter. And in the medieval world, winter is not merely a season, it is a test, one that determines whether months of preparation have been enough, and very soon you will find out. The air changes before anyone says a word about it. You notice it during the morning, a sharper chill, a different smell carried on the wind. The leaves have begun turning colours. Fields that once shimmered green now wear shades of golden brown. Summer has quietly stepped aside. Autumn is taking control, and everyone knows what comes next. Winter, in the modern world, winter often means heavier coats, holiday decorations, and occasional complaints about scraping ice from car windows. In the medieval world, winter means survival. Every decision made throughout the year is about to face examination. Did the harvest succeed? Were enough supplies stored? Is there sufficient firewood? Will livestock remain healthy? Can the household endure months of cold weather? The answers matter enormously. You quickly notice a change in behavior across villages and towns. Preparation becomes the dominant activity. Everywhere you look, people are working, fields must be harvested, food must be preserved, buildings must be repaired. Firewood must be gathered, nothing can be postponed. The calendar is unforgiving. One mainstream historical fact is that preserving food was essential to medieval survival. Drying, salting, smoking, pickling, and other methods helped communities store supplies for colder months when fresh food became scarce. You spend part of the day helping gather firewood. At first, the task sounds straightforward. Then you remember that nearly every medieval task eventually becomes exhausting. The wood must be cut, stacked, transported, stored, and enough must be collected to last for months. A small pile is not reassuring. A large pile is barely reassuring. Winter has a remarkable ability to consume resources. Nearby, families inspect roofs. Loose thatch requires repair. Gaps need sealing. Walls need attention. A warm home can make the difference between comfort and misery. Nobody wants cold air finding unexpected ways indoors. Unfortunately, cold air seems highly motivated. As the weeks pass, the countryside gradually changes. Harvest activity dominates the landscape. Workers move through fields gathering crops. Wagons transport grain. Storm buildings fill steadily. The atmosphere feels serious but hopeful. A successful harvest provides confidence. A poor harvest creates anxiety. The stakes are impossible to ignore. You visit a granary where supplies are being carefully organized. The attention to detail is impressive. Every sack matters. Every measurement matters. Every loss matters. Food security determines everything. The workers understand this completely. You remember those endless fields from earlier in your journey. Now their purpose feels even more obvious. Months of labor are being transformed into survival. A farmer nearby studies the stored grain with the same focus a modern investor might give a financial portfolio. Honestly, the grain is probably more important. As evenings grow colder, daily routines begin changing. People spend more time indoors. Candles become increasingly valuable. Fireplaces become gathering points. Families cluster around warmth whenever possible. The social world shrinks slightly. Not because people want isolation, because darkness arrives earlier. Travel becomes less appealing, and everyone enjoys being warm. You certainly do. One night, while sitting beside a fire, you listen to conversations about previous winters. The stories vary dramatically. Some winters were mild, others were severe. One elderly villager describes a season so cold that rivers froze solid. Another remembers heavy snowfall lasting weeks. The details may be exaggerated, the emotions are not. Winter leaves strong memories, especially difficult winters. Historians still argue whether regional climate fluctuations played larger roles in shaping medieval economies and social conditions than earlier historians recognized. Evidence increasingly suggests weather could influence events in profound ways. People in the Middle Ages may not understand climate science. They certainly understand consequences. Outside, the wind strengthens, branches sway. The sound echoes through the darkness. You feel grateful for shelter. Many travelers are not so fortunate. Roads become harder to navigate during winter. Journeys slow. Trade can suffer interruptions. Entire communities grow more isolated. The season changes how the world functions. One quirky medieval belief held that certain winter nights carried unusual supernatural significance, with spirits, strange omens, or magical events thought more likely to appear during the darkest periods of the year. Long nights encourage storytelling, and storytelling encourages imagination. You notice this around every fire: ghost stories, legends, folk tales, old family traditions. The darkness beyond the walls becomes a canvas for mystery. Children listen wide-eyed. Adults pretend skepticism while remaining suspiciously attentive. The stories survive because people enjoy them. Perhaps because winter provides extra time to tell them. As temperatures continue dropping, livestock require additional care. Animals represent valuable investments. Losing them can be devastating. Barns receive attention. Feed supplies are monitored. Every creature must be considered. A farmer spends 20 minutes discussing the welfare of a particular cow. The concern appears entirely justified. The cow, meanwhile, appears uninterested in the discussion. A common pattern throughout history. The first snowfall arrives quietly. Tiny flakes drift downward. Children celebrate immediately. Adults respond with considerably more caution. Snow is beautiful. Snow is also work. Roads become difficult. Travel becomes slower. Additional resources are consumed. The season demands preparation for reasons beyond aesthetics. Still, you cannot deny its beauty. The village looks transformed beneath fresh snow. Roofs turn white, fields disappear beneath a soft blanket. The landscape grows quiet, almost peaceful. Almost, because daily responsibilities continue. Water still needs carrying, animals still need feeding, wood still needs chopping. Winter may change the scenery. It does not cancel chores. Nothing cancels chores in the Middle Ages. By late season, everyone begins watching supplies carefully. Food remains available, but abundance feels more distant. The stored harvest now matters more than ever. People measure, count, conserve, plan. Every household develops strategies. Every family hopes preparations will prove sufficient. The uncertainty never fully disappears. Yet neither does resilience. Communities adapt. Neighbors help one another. Experience guides decisions. People endure. As another cold evening settles over the village, you sit beside a fire and watch sparks drift upward into the darkness. The room feels warm. Outside feels very cold. The contrast is comforting. For a while, conversation slows, the fire crackles softly, wind brushes against the walls. The season seems endless, yet everyone knows spring will eventually return. The challenge is reaching it. And as you watch the flames dance, you realize your long journey through medieval life is nearing its end. One final day remains. One final look at everything you've experienced. One final chance to answer the question that began this adventure. Could you truly survive here? Tomorrow, you will find out. The fire burns low beside you. Outside, winter still grips the village, though somewhere beyond the frozen fields and bare trees, spring waits patiently for its turn. You sit quietly and think back over everything you have experienced: the muddy roads, the smoky cottages, the endless fields, the crowded markets, the towering castle, the monastery bells, the dangerous roads, the bustling town, the uncertain medicine, the shadow of war, the joyful festivals, the strange courts, the long winter. It has been quite a journey, and now comes the final question. Would you actually survive a day in medieval times? The honest answer is that surviving a day would probably be manageable. Surviving a week would be harder. Surviving a month would become genuinely challenging. Surviving years would require adapting to an entirely different world, a world where nearly every convenience you take for granted simply does not exist. You glance around the cottage. The answer is visible everywhere. No electric lights, no central heating, no refrigeration, no modern medicine, no instant communication, no supermarkets, no indoor plumbing, no internet. The villagers have never heard of online shopping. They would probably view it as some kind of sorcery, then immediately ask whether it could deliver firewood. One mainstream historical fact remains impossible to ignore. The overwhelming majority of medieval people worked directly or indirectly in agriculture. Their survival depended upon labour, weather, community cooperation, and careful resource management. You experienced only a glimpse of that reality. For them, it is life itself. The more you reflect, the more impressive it becomes. Not because medieval life is romantic, because it is difficult, very difficult, yet people endure, generation after generation. They build homes, raise families, corricate communities, develop traditions, share stories, laugh at jokes, complain about neighbours, celebrate festivals, fall in love, grow old. The basic rhythms of human life continue despite all the hardships surrounding them. You remember the village well. The smell of wood smoke lingering in the morning air, the farmers studying the sky, the blacksmith working beside a glowing forge, the market vendors arguing passionately about prices, the musicians filling the square with song, even the goose, especially the goose. History may forget many details. The goose refuses to be forgotten. As daylight slowly fades outside, you consider another misconception often attached to the Middle Ages. People sometimes imagine medieval individuals as fundamentally different from modern people. They are not. Their knowledge differs, their technology differs, their circumstances differ. But their hopes, fears, ambitions, frustrations, and humour feel surprisingly familiar. The parent worrying about a child's future, the merchant hoping for success, the traveller concerned about the road ahead, the farmer watching the weather, the patient seeking relief from illness, the soldier uncertain about tomorrow. These emotions remain recognisable across centuries. Historians still argue whether modern people tend to overemphasize the differences between medieval society and their own lives while underestimating important continuities in human behavior. The debate is likely to continue for a very long time. Human beings are complicated. History is even more complicated. One quirky medieval belief provides a fitting final example. In some places, people believed certain dreams carried meaningful messages about future events. Dream interpretation fascinated many communities. Whether those dreams actually predicted anything remains unclear. Yet the desire to understand the future feels deeply familiar. Modern people simply use different methods. Usually, you sit quietly for a while longer. The fire crackles softly, shadows move across the walls. The cottage feels smaller than it did when you first arrived, not because it changed, because you understand it now. You understand the effort required to build it, maintain it, heat it, live within it. You understand the fields beyond the village, the roads connecting settlements, the institutions shaping society, the challenges people face every day. Most importantly, you understand how much work survival requires. The Middle Ages are not a fantasy landscape filled exclusively with castles and knights. They are a living world built upon labor. Countless hours of labor. Someone cuts the wood, someone grows the grain, someone bakes the bread, someone repairs the roof, someone carries the water, someone tends the animals, someone keeps everything moving. Without those people, the entire system stops. As evening deepens, snow drifts softly beyond the windows. The village settles into silence. Families gather around fires. Children grow sleepy. Conversations become quieter. The long day approaches its end. And so does your journey. You may not have lasted very long as a medieval villager. Your complaints about mud alone would probably become legendary. Your enthusiasm for indoor plumbing would certainly confuse everyone. And your repeated attempts to explain smartphones would likely result in uncomfortable meetings with local authorities. Still, perhaps you would adapt eventually. Humans are remarkably adaptable creatures. They always have been. The people around you certainly are. They navigate uncertainty with resilience, hardship with determination, cold winters with preparation, illness with hope, loss with perseverance. Life continues. That may be the greatest lesson of all. The fire burns lower, the room grows warmer and quieter. Outside, the wind eases. Inside, the final moments of the day drift gently onward. And now, as your journey through medieval life comes to a close, it is time to let the pace slow completely, to leave the roads, markets, fields, castles, and villages behind, to settle comfortably into the quiet, to rest. The night has become very still. The sounds of the village fade one by one. A distant door closes. A final conversation softens into silence. The fire settles into glowing embers. Above the rooftops, stars shine over the sleeping countryside, just as they have for countless generations. The same stars watched over farmers returning from fields, travelers walking dark roads, monks copying manuscripts by candlelight, and families gathered around winter fires. They shine without hurry, without concern, peaceful and constant. You imagine the snow-covered fields resting beneath that starlight, the paths hidden beneath soft white drifts. The village sleeping peacefully, wrapped in quiet darkness. Nothing needs doing now. No chores, no journeys, no preparations. The harvest is stored. The doors are closed. The animals are safe. The fire is warm. And for a little while, the world feels calm. So let your thoughts drift as gently as falling snow. Let the distant centuries fade into the darkness. Let the sounds grow softer, the roads disappear, the bells fade, the voices grow quiet. Only the peaceful glow of the fire remains. And as the embers slowly dim, you can finally leave medieval life behind and rest beneath the same timeless stars that watched over all those ordinary people living their extraordinary days. Sleep comes quietly now. The village dreams, the countryside dreams. History itself seems to settle into a gentle silence, and you can do the same.